Welcome to the questions and responses on ankles and feet. And I have to divide this up into two different sections. One that'll be on our main social media channels. Question one. It's a heck of a world we're living in. At Gene. Okay. Dr. John, what causes the collapse of the arches or flat feet? I can't wear high heels anymore. Also, my ankles have gone deformed. I had an MRI scan of showing both feet. I have ripped tendons, ripped ligaments. I was told I need operations on both feet at one time. Oh my gosh. Let's get you healthy. Operations on the feet without understanding the cause of collapsed arches or flat feet are going to be ineffective. So what you have to understand, those foot and maintains its arch through the intrinsic muscles or muscles inside of the foot that maintain that arch. Now, those nerves that supply those muscles come out of the sacrum and lumbar area. So you cannot get flat feet or collapsed arches if you have healthy intrinsic muscle function. So you have to look at the lumbar and sacrum areas because those are the nerves that supply it. So once you look at pelvic instability, the lumbar, the sacrum area, and that lumbar can also be affected if there's a lateral deviation of the thoracic or abnormal force loading. So you have to look at the entire structure. Now, knowing that the feet are flattening out and it's been long term, all the structures in there are designed to function with correct biomechanics. You alter the biomechanics, tendons, ligaments, everything is going to be put under an abnormal force loading. Now, an MRI, inflammation distorts the computer's interpretation of what that image is. Because what an MRI is, you got this magnet flipping around the body, faces the hydrogen ions in one direction, and the computer has to interpret it. So, yeah, ripped, torn, no kidding. Like, duh, you've got altered biomechanics. So all the normal structures are going to be put under an abnormal force loading. And ligaments, tendons, all of that stuff is living tissue. So you have to restore the normal function. Then the tendons and ligaments can remodel to the new biomechanic configuration. So I would absolutely find, because if you go to a surgeon, you're going to get a surgical recommendation. Go to somebody that's skilled in restoring the arches of the feet without a knife, only because you cannot operate on a foot if you've got compromised nerve supply and altered biomechanics of the pelvis, the knee, everything. You've got to look at the entire structure, at what the problem is. The problem is not just pain in the foot and torn ligaments and tendons. Unless you were standing there nice and neat and a truck rolls over your foot. You've got to look that this is the end result of lumbar and sacrum issues. If you have direct trauma to the foot, where a truck literally rolled over it, then a surgery is a good idea. But if this is a chronic degenerative condition from compromised nerve supply to the foot that's never been addressed, you've got to look at the lumbar and sacrum area, then the altered biomechanics of the pelvis, then look at the biomechanics of the knees, then you restore those arches of the foot. And I would correct everything first, and then surgery may be able to be avoided. Question 2 from Kiki Maui. Hi, Doc. I have tremendous pain on the right foot, lower mid area of the foot. I've been to my podiatrist, and he can't find anything. He's given me an air cast, but I'm still in a lot of pain. Holy moly, an air cast. Okay, the way the body is, the way joints are, if you limit the motion, you're going to limit how that body functions or that joint part functions. An air cast is going to solve the foot, but you've got to do some actual detective work. A doctor should really be a detective. Pain on the lower mid area of the foot, you may have beginning loss of the arches of the foot. You could also have subluxations in the foot because you have the ankle is like a U joint. Then you have the talus in the middle of that U joint. And that talus can go forward on the lateral side of the foot in an inversion sprain. And chronic inversion sprains that have never been corrected, that means that talus could be out and it's never been assessed by a competent doctor. to reposition that can also cause an alterations of the bones in front of that, okay, or the metatarsals or the tarsal bones. The tarsal bones can also be altered from that abnormal function of that talus. So when you're looking at everything, the body is smart, okay? And the area that you're describing that pain, those tarsal bones could be subluxated. They could be dropped down, okay, which is the most common. They could be dropped up. Like in the past, you could have twisted your ankle. You could have stepped on a rock that could have shot it up straight, and they're not going to identify that on an x-ray. You could have dropped a brick on the foot and that could have dropped it down. So you got to look at the entire biomechanics. Now, if your big toe is leaning towards the other ones, that means that the intrinsic muscles are also compromised. So, just to put a cast on an area, it's kind of like treasure hunting. X almost never marks the spot. Ow, hurt here, pain there, that problem there. No, you've got to look at the lumbar biomechanics, the pelvis biomechanics, the sacrum biomechanics, because those are where the nerves that come out that supply the foot. If you have any kind of deviation of that toe, that could mean that you've got altered intrinsic muscles of the foot. And this is just an alarm in the foot, a problem in the lumbar and sacrum area. And yeah, so find a competent doctor that can assess. And one of the ways to do that is to do a shearing force on each one of those tarsals, a shearing force on each one of the metatarsals, and to assess to see if that talus is off. But all of those altered biomechanics of the foot itself, you have to make sure that you've got good nerve supply to that foot from the lumbar and sacral area. Yeah, find a doctor that understands that he's got to be a detective. One of the most brilliant doctors ever, Dr. Jacobson, one of my mentors, he said, to find out what's wrong with a patient, you got to do two things: ask them and listen. And your doctor is not listening. Question 3 from Neil Prakashid, 9436. Bunions, ? Yes, bunions are a lateral deviation of the toe. It's not a foot problem, it's a foot alarm. What do I mean by that? You have to have, the foot is a beautiful design. It lasts as long as you're alive if you work it. If you compromise the nerve supply to that foot, the foot flattens out. If you compromise the nerve supply, and one of the ways that I look to see if there is compromised nerve supply to that foot, which is not a foot problem, it's a foot alarm, it indicates lumbar or sacral issues. And if that bunion is forming, that means you've got weak intrinsic muscles of the foot. That is absolutely alarm for lumbar dysfunction, pelvic dysfunction, sacral dysfunction, and then that's going to put up altered hip and knee dysfunction. Plus, the other side because you got 2 feet, if you have bunion formation on one aspect, your body weight is going to shift to the other side. So you have to look at the lumbar, sacrum, pelvis. Once you've identified and corrected the problems in those areas, then you can start to work the intrinsic muscles of the foot, but also look at look at actual direct trauma to that foot. You've got to look at old inversion sprains of the ankle. That can knock the talus out. That can alter the tarsal function. That can alter the arches of the foot, and those metatarsals can have scar tissue in there. And then that can cause that big toe to deviate. So bunions can go away, but you got to start. It's like you're building a foundation. You got to get the look at the lumbar, sacrum, pelvis, and then the altered biomechanics. And I tell my patients, when I see bunion formation, I'll say, take a picture of it, because you're going to see that baby go away. Because once you restore the nerve supply, then you restore the intrinsic muscles, and then the bunions literally do go away. Question 4 from Delive Free Nana 9059. I feel some nodules on the bottom of my foot along the ligaments. Any cure? Yes, your body forms those nodules. Now, the most important is to understand that the body forms it based on a trauma. Now, you could have had, jumping off of a wall, landing on a rock. That can cause a direct trauma. damaging the structures, and the body will form a nodule around that initial trauma, or that altered biomechanic, that inflammatory response, that tissue damage, to form it. The most common nodules, okay, that I see are when you look at the foot, it's like a tripod. You should be landing on right behind the big toe, right behind the little toe, and the heel. And this is like a tripod. What you'll see in the middle of the foot, where you should have a callus on the big toe, callus on the little toe, if you start to see a callus in between those areas, and you do not see a callus on the big toe and the little toe area, then, on the ball of the foot, and you see a callus on the ball of the foot in the middle, that means you've got compromised nerve supply to the intrinsic muscles of the foot. And the most common nodule that I see is called Morton's neuroma. And this is in the middle of that foot over there, fourth, fifth metatarsal. And it's literally the body protecting an altered biomechanics, because your foot is designed to hit on the heel and hit on the outside ball of the foot and the medial portion of the ball of the foot in this cushiony action to cushion your gait on the planet. But if you have compromised nerve supply, instead of, you're going to be doing the same heel strike, but you're going to be landing on the middle of the foot, those structures are not designed to withstand that impact. And so nodules are formed there. So know that the nodules generally are formed from either direct trauma, dropping a brick on the top or jumping off and hitting a rock on the bottom. And I'll tell you the truth, I've done both of those. So you've got to restore the nerve supply. So the pelvis may be an issue, the sacrum may be an issue, the lumbar may be an issue, the calf may be an issue. So look at all of the structures involved. Look at the bottom of the foot. Nodules has only an alarm telling you that there's a dysfunction somewhere else. Question 5 from Sophia Corpus 9769. Please promote a good barefoot shoe for us. I like 2 of them. Okay, one of them is the toe shoes by Vibram. I use those every day. It's fantastic. And then Zero shoes. I think it's XERO. Those are excellent. The toe shoes, my kid patients like them because they kind of make my foot like a gorilla foot. And I say, yeah, my dad was an orangutan, and they laugh and stuff. But the toe shoes I love, except the toe shoes, I totally recommend you get the toe socks. And just the toe socks are $12 a pair. And I was raised with a single mom, four kids, so it just bothers me to spend that much on a sock. So the Zero shoes, they still have the full range of motion. There's no heel padding, there's no arch support, so you get that full range of motion. One of the biggest things, when you're switching to barefoot shoes, your walking is completely changed. So it may take a couple of weeks to alter those biomechanics, because when you strike on a normal shoe, it has a thick padding on the heel, and that actually alters the biomechanics of how you're normally walking. So this is why I love the barefoot shoes, Zero shoes, and the Zero shoes look more like regular shoes. Okay, the toe shoes are more of a statement to say, hey man, this is a completely different thing I got on my feet. And just know it may take a couple of weeks to work into it, and it's going to be the greatest thing in the world. When you relearn to walk correctly, it de-stresses out the pelvis, de-stresses out the hip, the knee, everything. Hugely important that we shift to shoes that allow the foot the full range of motion. Question 6 from J Power 2010. I have a friend whose husband suffers from something called Haglund's deformity. Apparently his situation is so bad he can barely walk. His wife says that doctors are recommending surgery where they need to operate on his Achilles tendon. Could you describe what's happening during Haglund's deformity and how to help? I forgot to mention my friend says her husband has been playing hockey and martial arts for years. Yep, and he started when he was a kid, and I'll tell you why. They believed he got his injuries due from the past sports. Sorry that the info is important, I'm sure. Okay, so let's look at this. Tendons attach to bones. and that tendon is going to be pulling it. Now, if you've ever looked at bones, and this is a great view of this, you're going to see bones aren't smooth. They have little peaks and valleys, and that is where the tendons attach. They attach on those peaks but there's a law called Wolff's Law. Bones lay down where it's needed, resorb where it's not. So that tendon constantly pulling on that bone is put under a greater force loading, and the body lays down or thickens those structures. This is why when you look at just any human bone or any animal bone, you're going to see ridges and things, and that typically is where the tendons attach that are going to cause that area to move. Now, in Haglund's deformity, it's a bony growth on the heel on the calcaneus, right where the Achilles tendon attaches. And it can be extremely painful when you put shoes on. But what this is from is that tendon has been pulling it. Now, there's a couple of reasons that this could happen. One, you could have had altered biomechanics where you're not landing on the heel correctly. There could be an old twist or inversion sprain. There could be weak intrinsic muscles of the foot that's causing when that calcaneus is pivoting because the Achilles tendon is attaching on it. And remember, the Achilles tendon is also called the triceps array. You got the left and right gastroc and the soleus attached to that. And so this is the main hip or main foot plantar flexion. This is literally how you jump. Okay, so it's hugely important. And so if somebody has nutrient deficiency growing up, that means the bone's not healthy. If they've had altered biomechanics, like falling off of swing set when they were 5, or they had to wear some type of orthopedic shoes when they were growing up, some type of altered foot biomechanics that's causing that Achilles tendon to pull on that calcaneus in a force loading greater than it was designed. Also, nutrient deficiencies when the child's growing up. And this is also going to be pulling on that area. Another common area is on the tibia where the quadriceps attaches. And that's, again, super, super common from the same cause. Either nutrient deficiencies, abnormal force loading, or some past trauma. Now, for one, Haglund's deformity clues you into altered foot mechanics, but it also could be altered lumbar, pelvis, or sacrum issues. So let's start looking. You're going to build the building from the ground up. So look at the lumbar, look at the sacrum, do stress x-rays and static x-rays to make sure that you've got good, healthy nerve supply to that foot. Then you got to look at the knee mechanics and calf mechanics and the foot mechanics. This means when you look at the ankle joint, you got the talus in the middle of there. So long-term or old inversion sprains could have kicked that talus forward, which means that the biomechanics of that calcaneus are altered, creating that Haglund's deformity or creating that bony protrusion where that Achilles tendon attaches to. And then you've got to restore the arches of the foot, do a shearing force load. So even if you have that Haglund's deformity, you reset the talus, or that's the bone right in the middle of the U joint of the foot. Look at the tarsals. There's going to be altered biomechanics there because there could be a chronic calcaneal subluxation. Look at the metatarsals. Do a shearing force on those to make sure. So you've got to get a doc that's familiar with understanding that Haglund's deformity is not a problem of the Achilles tendon attaching to the calcaneus. There's going to be altered biomechanics of the foot, the knee, the pelvis, and the sacrum. So when you correct all of that, okay, and restore that normal motion, then you're going to see that Haglund's deformity. You may always have it protruding, so you may have to wear thicker socks, put some moleskin on there, alter the shoes a little bit. But I've seen a lot of times by restoring the arch of the foot, restoring the biomechanics, restoring everything, okay, then the discomfort of that gets less and less and less, and eventually goes away where they can use normal shoes. So there's a lot of things that you can do to change the biomechanics of how you walk. And there's also a law, Wolff's Law, bones lay down where it's needed to resorb where it's not. So if you look at Haglund's deformity, has really an adaptation to compromise nerve supply, compromised biomechanics, past trauma, nutrient deficiencies. Okay. And I see a lot of like a prominent tibia tuberosity on the tibias, where kids were using their bodies before the skeleton was matured. And you'll even see, like Schmerl's node in the spine, where kids were lifting great weights and before their skeletal maturity. So correct all of those things, and you may reduce the discomfort to where you can function correctly. But knowing that this is there, you've got to be a detective and look at everything: lumbar, pelvis, sacrum, knee, altered arches of the foot, intrinsic muscles, talus subluxation, metatarsal dysfunction, and look at nutrient deficiencies too. And then you're going to get the maximum recovery. Now, if your question wasn't answered in this video, please visit the Dr. B VIP, because I will respond to the rest of the questions there. And God bless you all. Stay healthy, my friends.